Hey, and welcome to GameRomp Easy Mode. We're going to talk about games like we usually do, and it's going to be a nice, easy time.
Super chill, relaxed.
So,
We're your hosts, Deanna. Hello.
and I'm David. We got a little bit to talk about. I don't know. Well, actually, you know what? There was one thing I think I'll bring up first before anything.
Okay.
So, you had recently played, or tried to play,
Oh no.
I think it's Visions of Mana. It's the brand new game in the Mana series.
Yeah.
And
Tried is definitely the right word for it.
I'm going to say I am a huge fan of the first few Mana games. Secret of Mana is probably the first RPG that I ever super got into, back on the Super Nintendo game.
Can I ask a real stupid question before we really get into it?
Sure.
Is it confirmed that it's pronounced mana and not like mana? Do you think there's any distinct difference, or just whatever someone prefers?
I don't know. Mana or Mana, I think both are right.
Okay.
Maybe it's just an accent thing.
Yeah.
Mana is a word that is used in so many things. It's not just the title of the game. I mean, if you want to get technical about it, it's in Japan it's called Seiken Densetsu. So they don't
even use the word mana.
No.
So it wouldn't be pronounced. Okay. I guess pronunciation has just been a thing for me lately.
I say don't overthink it. But okay. Yeah, it was translated. Actually, the first game in the Mana series, if you want to call it that. I think most people call it the Mana series just because it's easier than saying Seiken Densetsu all the time. But anyway, the first game in the Mana series was on the Game Boy, and it was brought over and localized as Final Fantasy Adventure.
Oof.
Yeah, they're like, well, Final Fantasy is big. Nobody's heard of this other thing. Let's just call it Final Fantasy Adventure.
And also, I feel I don't know, bringing the first game in a series and starting it on the Game Boy is just...
Well, that's
especially
the thing.
Because, is it an action RPG or something?
That was the first game. They didn't decide to bring it over to the West on the Game Boy. It just was a Game Boy game.
Oh, okay. Because I just remember, the screen was super, tiny. So certain games just didn't feel like it crossed over. But I guess if they designed it with that in mind, then maybe it's
that's
different.
how it always was, even in Japan.
Okay.
It was the second game, Secret of Mana, that was put on the Super Nintendo. And that's, the first time they used Mana as the title in the West. And they kind of just stuck with it. And that one was amazing, and I loved that game. I played that game as a kid, and I played it with a friend, too, because it had multiplayer, has amazing music, amazing visuals. That really inspired me a lot as a kid to draw. Eventually, there was Seiken Densetsu 3, which never made it to the West, but I did eventually play that on a fan translation, and I love that game, too. That game is also amazing and beautiful for a Super Nintendo game, and it has some incredible music. Then I think there was Legend of Mana, and that was the last Mana game that I really got into. And that one has its issues. It's kind of different, but it has this weird thing where the world has been, I forget if destroyed or something, and you have to rebuild it with little game board pieces, I think.
Really? That's okay.
You get these little things and you place them down on the map, and that makes the locations pop up that you can explore. It's different. That's also where that little cactus guy first comes from. You saw the cactus guy in Visions of Mana, and he's become a recurring mascot, I guess.
Oh, that little guy. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but I think that's the first appearance of him. Whereas other things like Rabbites have been there the whole time. Actually, the first few games had Final Fantasy things. The first game had chocobos. The second game had Moogles. I think they kind of stopped doing that, but...
No, was that because they put those in before they brought it to the West, calling it a Final Fantasy?
I don't know if that's what helped them decide to call the first one Final Fantasy Adventure, but maybe they just didn't take things too seriously back then, which is fine. It was fun and goofy. I mean, I don't think there's any Final Fantasy game where you can turn into a Moogle, but in Secret of Mana, that's a status effect. You can be Mooglified, and that makes it so that you can't attack.
Oh, so it's kind of like how the sheep cast in WoW.
Yeah, sort of, yeah. Except you still have freedom of movement. You can still move around. But anyways, so yeah, I was a huge fan of the Mana series back then. After that, they've kind of lost their way, in my opinion. And it hasn't really been the same. And I played a few of them here and there, but nothing's really caught my attention. And sad to say, this new one also doesn't look like it's something I want to play. But I think for me, it's for kind of a shallow reason, and I want to hear your opinion on this. But the character designs in the new game, Visions of Mana, to me are so just off-putting. I don't like them. And
Now, is that because of the style, the art style that they're actually using, or just the characters, regardless of what the style would look like?
I don't know, maybe a little bit of everything. Like there's
Because I kind of wish I could have actually played the demo as one would assume you should be able to do.
mm-hmm.
But because of the issues, I just couldn't get
Technical
into
issues.
it. Yeah. And it's weird because like a lot of people brought that up in the discussion forums on Steam,
Mm-hmm.
that it was like visions of stuttering as the joke. And then other people were like, "Oh, well maybe you just don't know how to do it," and like all this stuff. And I'm not saying my computer is like a supercomputer. It's not. It's old as whatever. But this is the first game or demo, but whatever, where I've had such an issue with this. So I don't think it's necessarily my computer.
No, I don't think it is either, because there are times when it's running at a super smooth frame rate and then like the action started and that's when it like just started stuttering to crazy. I think it must be like a processor issue, like when the AI kicks in, something is wrong there.
And then another part was like at least one person was like, here's all the things you should do, and like go into the settings and turn all this off, and then go into the NVIDIA card thing and turn these settings on, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, fine, if someone wants to go through all that trouble to get a demo to work, then fine, whatever. But just to play a demo, you shouldn't have to be going through all these like hoops just to get it to fucking work.
It's tough with PC games because everyone's system is different, but it feels like this port maybe was not thought out.
Maybe,
super well.
yeah. I mean, it's not a surprise that some ports just get done half-assed just to
Yeah.
get it out there.
It's
And maybe this is certainly one of them, because I've never had a problem with any other game quite like this.
Yeah, it's tough, especially for a Japanese dev. Like, they focus a lot on the consoles, so I guess the PC port was kind of just...
Thrown together and
Yeah.
hope it works. And I guess some people had okay if their computer is like super high-end shit, but I just can't afford that, so...
But, like, yeah, I don't think...
And I also
I don't
shouldn't
think
have
it is your
to.
computer. I think it is just something wrong happened. Because if it was your computer...
I would be having this issues with other games.
Your frame rate in this would have been super low throughout, but it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Not only that, but if it was my computer, I wouldn't be able to play Genshin as well as it usually does. Like, the only time I had an issue was because I didn't have the SSD at the time. And now, although I will say one more thing about this demo. Some people brought up, and I don't remember the name of it, I guess installed along with it so that people can't, like, unlock the whole game or something like that.
Oh,
It
interesting.
has I don't know if it necessarily installed it on my computer or if it just runs it while I'm trying to use the demo. Some kind of
Like
anti-cheating device.
Denuvo?
Yeah, I think that's the one. And a lot of people said that it's like more like fucking malware for the computer.
Yeah, it's not great.
And I'm thinking maybe that's part of it, because after I tried the demo yesterday, and you saw I was trying to also play Genshin, and in Genshin I was also still having issues.
Yeah, I noticed that yesterday when you were playing. Like, I saw you playing Genshin, and it's like it doesn't usually stutter like this, does it?
No, and that was after I did the demo, so I'm really pissed about that too.
Yeah, people. I don't know the full story on Denuvo, and I didn't know we were going to bring it up, so I didn't really look into it. But it is like a third party process that like runs in the background, and yeah, make sure there's no cheat or piracy kind of stuff going on. So it's like it's hooked into your system to protect the program it came with.
Yeah,
And
but it's
really
also
intrusive.
destroying my computer, which is
Yeah.
why I was having so much issues playing Genshin, which I've had no issues before until I was playing after that demo.
Interesting.
Now, I'll have to try it again later just to see if maybe it doesn't pop up again and it was just after playing it where I like shut down my system overnight
Yeah.
and make sure it doesn't come back.
Yeah, because I don't think I've ever seen your Genshin stutter or lag. Your computer runs it perfectly fine.
Yeah, so
I
was
mean,
also
phones
upset
play that
about-
game.
Yeah,
I don't know how, but
I was also upset over that, so. Needless to say, not a good
first impression.
not a good first impression of Visions of Mana.
I wonder if the game would run better if they didn't include Denuvo, because I've only heard bad things about that thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Part of me was like thinking, oh, maybe I should try the demo too, but
Oh god, no, not for 14 gigs.
14 gigs. It's not too bad, but like again, going back to what I brought up before, I just don't like the character designs, and I don't think I want to like look at these characters for a 40-60 hour adventure. There's just something about them. I don't know.
As far as character designs, for like the 5 minutes it worked. The only thing I thought was, one, the cat character, I thought it was female, but I guess it was just the haircut, and it's a dude. And I will say, I generally don't like furry characters with hair. They already have fur. They don't need hair. And then one of the other girls was like a southern girl, I guess, or Southern Belle or something with her accent. But I didn't really get to see much of the rest of the characters and how they worked, so.
I think for me, the thing I kind of don't mind I don't know if he was a cat or if this is the one you were talking about. It looked like it had like a furry face, right? But then there's two other characters that are just humans with tails.
Yeah.
I don't like that kind of thing. It's like, commit to it. If this is a squirrel person, make him a squirrel person. Don't just have this beautiful anime woman and she has a tail stapled onto her back.
I guess. But I feel like we already kind of discussed that with the Skyrim Khajiits, where they have different levels.
Yeah, I mean, I won't go into it again, but I don't know, I just don't like the designs. And it's sad because, like, I don't know if it's a different artist or whatever, but Secret of Mana, Legend of Mana, and Seiken Densetsu 3 didn't have bad designs, in my opinion. I think all the characters looked interesting and good in those, but...
And one quick last thing about the demo. I really, really, really do not like demos that start you in the middle of what I assume is the story.
I guess they just don't... It's probably because the intro is going to take freaking forever.
I guess, but it's just like, here, have like 5 characters, and instead of letting you just slowly explore and learn how to manage one character, we're going to give you 5, and also we're going to give you like 10 text boxes explaining how things work. No, I don't want that.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. I can see that. But like at the same time, I don't think a demo where you're just sitting through the beginning of depending on some games. Like if it was Breath of the Wild, yeah, that doesn't take long to get to the fun stuff. But if it was like, I don't know, what's a game that has an intro that takes forever?
But what about one of the other, I guess, Super Nintendo version of Legends of Mana? Like, okay, I guess the introduction was technically long, but it didn't look bad. I got some idea of it. Like, that didn't seem bad. Just use that long introduction area, whether it takes like 2 to 4 hours or something, just let that be the demo. I can get into a game like that. I can't get into it if you're going to shove 10 text boxes telling me how to control 5 characters at once. That maybe it's my ADHD, maybe it's just me in general. I'm just going to be like, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Maybe you would like the other one. The I forget what they called the Seiken Densetsu 2 or 3 remake that they recently came out with. It's in 3D. This one's called Visions of Mana or Legends.
Visions.
I forget what the other one's called, but yeah, the remake of the Super Nintendo game in 3D. That has a demo.
Honestly, I was just thinking, should I just try some of the older ones in 2D?
I mean, if you want.
That way, at least I know it'll work.
I think that they hold up. They're beautiful.
Yeah, okay, fine. I'll try one of those instead.
Okay. But I think the demo for that other game, it does just start at the beginning of the game. And like that can be good, that can be bad depending on your taste, cuz like there's a lot of story and a lot of like not action happening, but maybe that's good because it's an RPG and sometimes that just happens. So
yeah, I think for me personally, I prefer that, cuz there was another indie game that I tried. Their demo did the same thing. They're like, here, we're gonna give you these 1 or 2 characters, or whatever it was, and also we're gonna give you all these items in your bag, and there's like 50 items that you can, like, sure, I guess I can look through all the items, or you could just give me one item at a time as I go through a demo story or something.
Yeah, it's tough, especially for RPGs that has so many systems and mechanics and items. Like, it can be overwhelming, especially if you're like thrown in. Like, even like Genshin, for example, like there's so much crap in that game.
Yeah, I just got to Fontaine.
At least you start slow and like you have the one character, the items are pretty simple, and then the complexity ramps up.
I mean, I just explored Fontaine last night for more hours than I actually wanted to. And I got to this point where it's like this starting the underwater stuff, and every few feet there was like, oh, a new game mechanic or something. I'm like, I don't want to read this.
Yeah. every new zone in that game has different like overworld puzzles.
Yeah.
So like that's gonna happen everywhere you go. Like, oh, now you're in Japan, it has these mechanics. No, you in Sumeru, there's these mechanics. And it's like I get it because like, do you really want to be solving the same puzzles from Mondstadt in every region forever?
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, I was surprised to see you go there to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, I guess, if you're not out leveled, but I don't think you can access like the main story quests out of order.
No, I mean, I wasn't trying to do that. I just wanted to get it because there's like the special event for like a one more day or something, and it's like just photography or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I was playing it, and I'm pretty sure like around 8 o'clock, give or take, I was like getting frustrated with all this shit. And then I just kept traveling. And for the most part, I didn't have to fight anything. I was just going around everything and just trying to get the main unlock things so I could see more of the land.
Mm.
And it was okay, I guess. It's just... And then the next thing I know, it's 11 o'clock at night and I hate myself.
It's funny. I mean, that is the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest strength of the game when you are just exploring and like...
But that's the thing, like, yes, I was exploring, and I guess a little bit of it was fun, but I was just like, there are so many other things I need to do. This isn't my issue. I don't know
This is definitely a you issue.
I don't know if I want to continue with this.
All right. Well, anyway, let's talk about something else.
Did you play anything other than Genshin?
I did play... Okay, so last week I played Kriegsfront Tactics.
Yeah.
And that got me in the mood to play more mecha strategy games. And I saw that Front Mission 2 had a demo. So I'm like, well, this is... I love Front Mission 3. I love Front Mission 4. I never played Front Mission 2. So now that I'm in the mecha mood, I want to try the demo out and see how it is. And I gotta admit that I don't really like it.
Did your demo experience go better than mine?
The problem wasn't the performance or anything. It's just that I guess in Front Mission 3 they changed the systems dramatically. And that's kind of what I'm used to. Front Mission 3, Front Mission 4, and Kriegsfront Tactics all work kind of in the same way where certain weapons on your mech have certain ranges. Like if you got like a shotgun, maybe it reaches like 3 squares away. If you have a machine gun, maybe it does like 4 squares away. And if you got like a sniper rifle, it's much further. Same with like the missiles or whatever. In Front Mission 2, in order to attack an enemy with your gun, you have to be 1 space away from them. So there's no range basically, except for certain like missiles.
That's weird.
It feels really limiting.
I would imagine, yeah.
Because like in the other game, like you can surround an enemy with like a bunch of your dudes, and because they don't have to be right up against them, you have more opportunities of attack. And then you also have melee attacks. But in Front Mission 2, it doesn't matter if you're attacking with melee or with a gun, you have to be 1 space away.
That is weird.
And I just didn't like how that felt. And there's one other thing too that is kind of a petty thing, but I also hate. Basically, in Front Mission 2, whenever you're moving your units around the map, they don't do the satisfying chunk, 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 chunk mecha stepping. They just do the shh, kind of like roller skating.
Oh, I was thinking like moving chess pieces or something, but...
Yeah, kind of. So they don't walk around, and they don't make this satisfying chunk, 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 and no matter how far you walk, if it's like 1 space away or your full movement range, it's just that sound and like the thing just moving there. It's not satisfying. I hate that. I want them to stomp.
Okay, so they sound kind of like skates.
Yeah.
Do they look like they have skates on? Or are they moving around normally with the
No, a lot of mecha will do this where like, oh, they're in the speed mode, and they'll kind of hunch over and like, I guess they'll have propulsion in the back, and yeah, they'll just kind of like get pushed along the ground. And in some you'll see wheels, and in some they're just kind of skating around. It's kind of weird.
Because like I guess if it's the skating sound, but they actually have the visuals of skating around, that would make sense. But I do understand that having the chunk 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 sound as they do normal footsteps or whatever would make more sense, or just feel better.
In Front Mission 3, that existed in the sense that like if you were moving around in any direction, they would be stomping around like chunk chunk chunk. But eventually you would unlock like these like speed parts that you could put on your mech, and those would let you go in a straight line for much further. And that's what would activate that. They would like they would hunch over and just go and like kind of like get a burst of movement that can go slightly further than walking, but only in like a set direction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then in Kriegsfront, they have kind of something where it's like they'll mostly stomp around, but like if they're just going in a straight line, they'll also do that. There's like some smart programming where it's mixed up. Sometimes they'll even like go around an obstacle. Like if you're moving like imagine like a knight chess piece, like an L shape, right?
Yeah.
They'll take a few stomps, dun, 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 and then like they'll have just a straight line and they go. Psh. So it's like it feels more dynamic. It feels more fun when it's not just a little skating noise. I don't know. It's so unsatisfying, and it's like a minor thing, but I want my mechas to be stompy.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I can understand that. Sounds can be a huge thing in games and other things.
Yeah, I mean, that is another thing. I brought this up last week, obviously, but like they have such crunchy. Like when your mech is firing on another mech, the sound of the gun, and then like hitting the armor on the other thing is like, just the sounds are so good and satisfying. I mean, I guess the sounds in Front Mission 2 were okay, but yeah, I think it's safe to say Krieg's Front did a much better job. Which is sad because like Square Enix has a ton of money. They could be putting money into this game to make it really good, but I think they just shoved it off onto some cheap developer somewhere out like in Europe where prices are cheap, and they just didn't really care. They're like, just make this, we're gonna sell it, whatever. It doesn't feel polished.
I mean, there's a reason why sound design is its own huge like subsection of games and also like, you know, movies and stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
because sound is a huge part of existence, I guess.
Yeah, and music too. Like I think games are getting better at not ignoring music, but there was a time where a lot of Western games just did not pay any attention to music. And it's like, you guys, have you not been playing games from like Japan and stuff? Music is such an important part of the game.
I mean, I feel like they still are failing music when it comes to their trailers at like video game conferences.
Western games are just weird about that, I guess.
Like, what if we just take this... Oh god, what was the most egregious one? I don't remember the game name, but I feel like it was like medieval knights kind of fighting, and then it's just like rap music.
Yeah,
it didn't make any sense. This is not the music that makes sense for medieval knight fighting style stuff.
It feels lazy.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but like it does feel like, oh, we need music in the background.
We need to make this cool for the general audience. So we're just gonna.
It's just like a marketing thing. Instead of making good custom music for the game, they're just like, we're just gonna license this song, whatever. And like you can license music, like Fallout licensed music, and it fits.
Yeah,
for an aesthetic
they actually,
they're going.
Like, thought about it.
Yeah, but then like you'll have a game like a shoot 'em up game, and it's just like, oh, here's another rap song, and it's like, does this fit? I don't know. Whereas then they'll play like Ace Combat, for example. That's a military game, I guess. It's kind of sci-fi, but like it's still like military jets shooting at each other. But they make custom music, and like it's so good. They'll like even tie the music into the story, which I love.
Yeah, actually, Ace Combat is an interesting one because, yes, it's military stuff for the most part. But then the music is like, I mean, I guess the song Zero has multiple parts to it.
Yeah.
But it seems like an overarching of opera type music. And when you think of military, you don't think opera.
Yeah, I mean, it depends.
But somehow it mixes well.
It depends on the game and on like the song. But some are opera, some are like flamenco. Some are just like some sort of synth pop. You can tell the dude, I forget his name, Keiki Kobayashi, I think, or something. I don't know. You can tell that he makes the music specifically for like each moment in the game. And in Ace Combat 7, there was this really cool example in the final mission where like you're fighting this big old sci-fi war machine. It's basically like a big flying wing that shoots out a bunch of little drones.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah. And like it has a force field. And you're like helpless against the force field, and like it's just shooting out all these drones, and there's like a ton of fighters fighting with you to fight back this unstoppable monstrosity. And like the music in the background is going, and you're hearing radio chatter, and like there's these people on the ground, like in this facility. They're like, oh, we're rushing through in here, we're gonna shut it down, blah blah blah. And like the story is building up as you're trying to survive. You hear gunfire over the radio, and like the music is playing, and then there's this one part where like this big cinematic moment happens over the radio. You can't see it because you're fighting this stuff in the air, and like the music just cuts out, and then you see like the force field go down, and then like the song just kicks up again with like this singing woman. She's like, ah, like it's just amazing. It's so good. Oh my god, I can't explain it, but Ace Combat is such an underloved series. I think maybe it's getting more respect these days, but yeah, anyone who hasn't played those games and wants like an interesting story and music experience, they're just incredible.
I wish I could get into the gameplay, but I've definitely listened to Zero many times because it's just powerful even on its own.
Yeah, that's true. it's interesting because they all have their own different ways of telling the stories. Because Zero, the way that story is told is by like you're watching like a documentary, and like this dude is like interviewing all the people that were in the war and stuff, right? And in like 5, you're following along the characters or whatever. And in 4, it's kind of like a story of from the perspective of somebody on the ground. It's like this kid. It's like, oh, this is what happened in my town, and you know, these airplanes crashed in and killed my parents, so I was an orphan. I had to work at a bar, and then just the different perspectives. It's
kind of like how you enjoyed, I think, the Gundam series, where it was more like, I guess, almost MASH, where it was the military people and just how they're
dealing with things.
Yeah, how their social structure and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there was the one that did focus on the kids or something, right?
Yeah, that was it double? Okay, there was the 8th MS team. That's the Vietnam one, and the other one was 0080 or something, or 8 like War in a Box or something. It's like a Christmas story too, because it takes place around Christmas, and everyone's just like going about their lives, and like the town's all decorated in Christmas stuff, and like everyone's just living without the realizing that there's like a nuke coming their way. And like the only one that knows is like the kid, and like this other dude is like, I can't let them blow up this whole town with a nuke, because okay, this isn't a Gundam podcast, but now that we're talking about it, I'm gonna freaking talk about it.
Okay, have fun with it.
So in that story, yeah, there's like the Gundam is like an advanced mecha suit that's like that the other faction basically they can't really fight it on equal footing, so that they learn that there's a new one being developed in this space colony, and they're like, we got to shut it down before it is actually put into, you know, war or into combat against our forces. So they hijack this space truck thing, and they're sending like a nuke over to the colony to blow it up. But there's like a ton of innocent people and children and stuff living on there. So one of the soldiers from that faction is like, well, I'm going to destroy this Gundam myself, you know, the hard way, so that we don't have to nuke everybody. And it's basically the story of how that plays out. Yeah, I love that kind of thing. It's more about the people and how they're dealing with it, with these, I mean, kind of cool mecha stuff, but like it's not the focus, because some of the mecha, sometimes I think any anime can get this, where it's like the fighting becomes the spectacle.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, that's less interesting to me. It's still there in the background because, I mean, it's still cool and all, but it's more about people living with this crap in their lives. I was like, oh yeah, this mecha is really cool, but if you're actually living there, it can be traumatizing. And the kid does get traumatized because he sees his friend.
Yeah, doesn't the school get destroyed or something?
At some point, the school gets, yeah, I forget if it gets destroyed or a part of it does, but the bigger thing is just like, yeah, he became friends with this other dude because while he was there infiltrating that station to like find the Gundam, the little kid like spots him, and he's like in he's in a Zaku, which is like that green mecha, like the grunt mecha.
Yeah.
And the kid's like, whoa, that's so cool. And they become friends, which is, I know, kind of weird, I guess. But like, the little kid is just so struck by the mecha. He is a typical kid who wants the little Gundams as action figures. And then he has to experience the realities and the horrors of war.
Oh, jeez.
And
he got more than he bargained for.
Yeah. And it's a powerful ending, because at the end of the story, all the other kids were like, oh, look, there was this Zaku was fighting the Gundam right outside of town. Wasn't that cool? Whoa, look at it. It's so cool. But he knew the people that were in the suits, and he knew that one of them was dead. And while all the other kids were cheering about how cool it was, he's just crying his eyes out.
Aww.
And it's a beautiful anime. It's sad. Of course it's sad.
But that's what makes it good.
Yeah. Because it is like these things that are just cool that we love to look at, like they can also be horrible. And like even in real life, like for Ace Combat, for example, I love those jets. They're so cool, flying around and stuff. And like some of the missions where you don't even shoot stuff, you're just flying around. It feels so fun. And seeing them in real life is also cool. Like, whoa, look at that jet flying. Like if I see like military helicopters flying around, I still get like, whoa, look at them. They're so cool. But then like you realize like there is also that other part of it that is like, you know, terrifying and sad. So it's like that double-edged thing.
You just really tend to enjoy the shows or games that take on more of the human drama and not necessarily just like, well, I guess we're just battling for 10 hours.
Yeah, because they're like, Gundam is such a huge series, right? There are some series like the two that I showed you that focus more on the people and like their stories. And then there are some like Gundam Wing, which is just, there is some story stuff there obviously, but it's just, here's a mecha and it's destroying like 100 things like it's the Goku machine. And that's not interesting to me.
Yeah, and then you get what, the Gundam. I'm assuming there's got to be a series like from the 80s that was just trying to sell toys.
Well, the first one was basically the guy wanted to make a story about war and he wanted to use it with mecha. And Bandai was like, "Yeah, sure, but
we have to make money.
We want to make toys out of these too. So, take your design, which originally was very like toned down, a military machine with like no colors. Make it white, make it yellow, make it red, make it blue, make it a toy.
Primary colors.
Yeah. And we're going to sell it." And that's why I think a lot of people like the Zaku's more, because they are just green. They're these green things with this big red camera thing in their face. And they're such a striking minimalistic machine that just it looks cool. Whereas the Gundams are just toys.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, well, GameRomp temporarily anime romp. What about you? I know you played another game.
Yeah, so I played a demo that actually decided to work, and it was an indie game. So I'm just going to do over the real quick basic info just so anyone else can look up this game, but I'll also try to remember to put this in the show notes, because that's what show notes are for. So the demo I played is called Cat Bait. It's by, maybe I'm going to mispronounce this, May Ni Prod, or I'm assuming May Ni Productions. And it's actually going to release, the Steam page says it should release August 25th. So when this episode releases, it should be another 2 weeks. And I'll just say one quick thing. The Cat Bait as like the Steam image that they show, I think they need to work on their logo a tiny bit, because I kept reading it as Cat Bale or Cat Ball because of how it looks.
I'll have to look at it.
Yeah, I'll have to show you later. But it's basically a little cute, very cute, cat-based vampire survivors.
Yeah.
So it does start, like, the first wave is literally just the mice characters, but each additional wave brings in new characters. Yeah. And I'm not entirely sure that they're all technically mice. Like, the little archer characters, to me, almost look more like hamsters. I don't know if there's a technicality to it.
Cousins of mice.
Sure, it's other little rodents, whatever. And there's also, like, bats, which are neither
flying
cousins.
Mice.
Depends. But it's cute. Yeah. And it was actually kind of surprisingly hard. Like, I played this on stream for, I want to say, maybe 2 hours. And I did not yet finish the demo.
Wow.
Because the demo is, like, I assume it's technically the first. It's hard. I guess it would be the first stage. But the first stage is 10 waves of enemies.
Okay.
But I only ever made it the furthest to wave 8, I think. And, you know, as you're starting to play, and this is going to be how everyone goes through it, you go as far as you can. Obviously, you're going to die pretty quickly in the early beginnings. And then you start getting used to how the AI works. Like, okay, these mice, I'm assuming the AI just points to where your character is and they start moving that direction. As the waves start growing and you get more enemies, the AI obviously gets a little bit more complicated. So other enemies start, like, they'll walk to a certain point, then they'll stop, and that's when they start to attack you. And you kind of start to learn how the AI works for each one. And then you get the weapons and you start learning how the weapons work. And here's an interesting part to me. In Vampire Survivors, the weapons that you pick and choose as the game goes along, your character, the one you're controlling, is actually using the weapons.
Yeah, I guess.
But because this is called Cat Bait, and it makes sense now, but I didn't catch that quite in the beginning, your character, whenever you're choosing the quote-unquote weapons, your character is not using the weapons. What you're choosing is other characters using those weapons. So, like, when you pick the cat archer, you're not the archer. It's another cat archer that's actually positioned on, like, a tower at the top of the level. And you are literally the cat bait. You're just running around. It's everyone else that's doing the job of killing the enemies.
Okay.
So I thought that was an interesting take on it, and it makes the name of the game, it is what it says on the tin, if you will. It just took me a little bit longer, because I'm like, oh, I'm using these weapons. No, you're not. You're just walking around.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, no matter what Vampire Survivor game you're playing, like, it gets to the point where, like, so many things are flying out of your character that it's like, is your character really doing all this? Whatever.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you don't think too deeply about, and it's fine.
Yeah, so this was just, like, a slightly different take on it, and it was really fun. I enjoyed it. I started trying different techniques, like, oh, I can't run through the enemies because they show you where they're spawning, and they'll show you where, like, say for the archer characters, where the arrows are going to be landing. Because they don't shoot it directly at you. They're like shooting it up in the air, and then the arrow falls down. And it'll have a little cross showing where that arrow is going to land.
And it can't hurt you.
It doesn't hurt you until it lands.
Oh, so it can hurt you.
Not the X showing where it's going to land.
Well, no, obviously.
Yeah, but the arrow will hurt you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's just like, yeah, you have all these projectiles, and it's almost like more visually cluttered than Vampire Survivors, oddly enough.
Maybe because you have to think about it more in that sense.
I think so, and it's just, you have to know where the enemies are going to be spawning, because again, they'll show you that. You gotta make sure you're not running into the X's wherever those start appearing and landing. It did take me a while to figure out, like, oh, I just can't walk into these things. I don't know, I'm not very good explaining these things, but it's
imagine a Vampire Survivor game. There's so many out there right now, so it's just that with cats.
I suppose, but it almost seemed a little bit tougher to me. At least at the beginning.
Let me ask you this then. What if I haven't played Vampire Survivors, which technically I haven't.
Wait, really?
I've only played one of those types, and it wasn't a Vampire Survivor. It was, I think it was 20 Minutes Till Dawn.
I remember I played a lot of Vampire Survivors.
But anyway, like, why would I choose this game over Vampire Survivor? What is the selling point on this versus any of the other millions of this
cuter.
type?
Like, Vampire Survivors is definitely like Castlevania. Well, I mean, some of the
Castlevania
sprites might, like, literally be ripped from it.
Traced, at least.
Sure.
No shame, but yeah.
It's definitely Castlevania aesthetic vibe.
Yeah.
This is cute, kawaii, kitty cats and cute little mice. And it's cute, but it's still hard as balls.
Have you heard of the HoloLive version of it?
I think I vaguely saw some, like, on your screen where you were, was it Angry Tom?
Yeah, I was watching, I haven't played it either, but it's free.
Angry Tom.
It's a free game, so there's that. And it is basically Vampire Survivors with, like...
VTubers.
Yeah, HoloLive characters, which I don't know a damn thing about.
I only know one of them.
But it's like, oh, these cute little anime sprites, and then the enemies are basically like, cute Japanese mascot-looking things. So some levels are like penguins, and some levels there's like hamsters and walking bread. And all sorts of weird, silly, cute things. And, like, this is going to sound mean, and I don't mean it to be mean, but, like, would I play this cat game versus that other one? Is this cat game free, or is it also...
I only play the demo. It's going to release August 25th. The thing is like, I don't know what they're going to be charging, but considering Vampire Survivors is only $5, it's going to be that or less.
I mean, to be fair...
In order to, like, be somewhat reasonable.
Competitive.
Yeah.
I don't want to be mean, and, like, people should be making money from their games, obviously. The HoloLive one being free is like an anomaly more than anything, right?
Well,
I guess it's an advertisement for their other stuff.
Yeah, that's what they're doing it for.
But, like, I'm just thinking, like, what is it about this game that is different enough that makes me want to play it?
I think it would just be the aesthetics, honestly.
Because, like, okay, the one I played is called 20 Minutes Till Dawn. I think that's what it's called. It was free on Epic, so I didn't pay for it. But you're basically, you start with one character, you unlock more as you go, and each character has their own gimmick. Like, one is better at, running and reloading. Some of them have magic effects, like, every so often, like, they'll shoot a fireball or something. So each character has their own unique gimmick, and then, like, you pick a weapon. You start, like, say you choose double handguns, or a shotgun, or a rocket launcher, or a flamethrower, whatever. So as you're playing and getting XP, you can upgrade your weapon, but also get different skills. Like, you'll shoot magical spears, or, like, magical axes, or like your attacks do chain lightning, etc. So it's got that same thing where, like, you level up and you pick one of different upgrades, right?
Yeah.
That one is different in the sense of, like, I think in Vampire Survivors, and I've seen enough of it to know, it's like you have, like, the set weapons, and then, like, the weapons get upgraded.
Yeah.
But in this one, it's like you can pick your weapons and your skills, and then each weapon or skill kind of has, like, a skill tree. So, like, when you level it up, like, say you choose, like, you're this level up, you can choose this dragon egg, and it won't hatch for a while, but once it does, then you can level up the dragon, and you can make it do, like, more damage over time, or you can make its AoE bigger, etc.
Yeah.
So, like, it was different in that sense. Like, there's different build possibilities.
Well, the difference in here is that, again, you're you're not picking weapons for your cat to choose.
Yeah, I know.
You are picking fighters to work for you.
But like ultimately it's the same thing, except I guess the arrows can hurt you, but
Well, the other archer's arrows, not the archer that you get. Is that what you were confused about?
wait, there's other archers?
Yeah, one of the mice types, the one that looks like hamsters to me, those are archers.
Oh.
So they're shooting arrows up into the sky, and then they land on the little X that shows up on the ground.
Do your archers not work that same way then?
The archer does shoot down arrows and hurts them, but it doesn't hurt you.
Oh, I thought you
There's
said...
there's two different types of arrows.
See, I thought that would have been interesting if you were the bait, like that you could take friendly fire from the
No,
people
because
shooting.
the arrows come down around you. It's not like you can't actually run into those arrows.
So ultimately, it's still kind of, I mean, okay, aesthetically,
I guess.
story-wise.
But it's also, I think another point is you have multiple characters that you can pick to fight for you, if you will. But there's only 3 towers, so you can only pick 3 of them.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then from there, it's like, oh, you can pick more attack, or you can pick attack, or you can pick an area of effect, or they fight faster. Okay. So there's like different things. I don't know.
I get you. There are so many. So many.
I guess, but this is like the first one I've actually played that isn't Vampire Survivors.
No, that's fair. I'm not saying like it's just interesting because like we could make a whole episode and talking about a different one every 5 minutes and still like not get through half of them. I mean,
so how did you get exposed to so many just watching other people, I guess?
Yeah. I kind of liked... It's an interesting gameplay loop of like making builds, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Even in other games, like, I don't know, like Hearthstone, Genshin, Fallout, any game where you can, pick a different skill and like, or a different character, Unicorn Overlord, Final Fantasy Tactics. Any game where you can make builds and you can think about how does this skill interact with this skill or this character interact with this character and the synergies between them. It's fun. So even just watching other people and thinking about it in my head is kind of like fun too. So yeah, I haven't played a lot because I'm cheap and whatever, but if I'm eating lunch and just want to watch a YouTuber I like play through one, it can be fun. But like, I don't know, I don't really watch too many of those anymore because there's still so many. Like, yeah, you brought up that one YouTuber and he's still playing a bunch of different new ones, and it's like, I think I'm getting to the point where it's like, okay, you're this sprite and you kill these other sprites and you pick up XP, and this thing makes your thing shoot out in this direction. This thing makes you shoot out 2 of these. This makes its AoE bigger, and it's like, it's getting kind of samey. So
I guess it's kind of just like pick which aesthetic you like, and then
well,
just
I was gonna say like,
type.
what new other elements can be brought to the table to make it interesting? Because we had
the idea.
We had the idea of making our own years ago when we were still messing around with game dev about
adding like a business aspect to it.
Yeah, like a front end, like, oh, sometimes you're doing the survival thing, and then the other time you're building up this thing to, support it. And we were going to make it cartoony and cute, because, like, well, I'm a cartoonist, and that's just how I draw, so...
Yeah, honestly, while I was playing Cat Bait, I was kind of thinking of our idea, and I'm like, man, I wish I wasn't so bad at programming.
Programming is hard.
I still like the idea of it.
I like the idea of it too, but like, I know programming is really hard. I mean, drawing is hard too. I get frustrated when I'm drawing my cartoons and like, it's hard to be happy with what I draw.
No, I mean, I know, because, I told you the other day, and maybe later today I'll go down to the art room and try my other stuff, but it's like, I really liked how the picture came out, but I worked an hour or 2 just trying to figure out because I'm like new to drawing, if you will, where you've been doing this, so you can probably... I wouldn't
say you're new, but sure.
I'm out of practice.
Okay, that's a more fair place, I can say.
So it's like I had to really, really think of how I'm positioning this Mankey in the space that it's taking up and how the perspective of that's working from the view of the person and down on the comic page. And it took me like an hour or 2 just to figure out the very basics. And then once I figured that out, drawing the rest of the Mankey was easy.
Yeah, I was going to say, your drawing of Mankey and Onyx were really good.
Yeah. Onyx was a little easier, actually, to draw because it's just a rock and, like, I'm assuming no one's really going to pay attention that if I drew Onyx multiple times over, say, 3 comic panels, they're not going to really give a shit if Onyx's stones are slightly different positions than another thing, if that makes any sense.
No, it's fine. It's funny.
Whereas Mankey, it's a little bit more, it needs to be a bit more consistent.
Yeah, I guess. Like, well, I mean, Mankey's a pretty funny shape too, so.
No, I know. Mankey's an interesting concept because even if you draw Mankey versus, say, Primeape, they're still a big old circular, fluffy thing with 4 arms.
It's pretty simple design, yeah.
Yeah, and like the only difference between Mankey and Primeape is maybe technically the size, because Mankey, I looked it up, Mankey's about like a foot tall, give or take. And like fucking Onyx next to it is 28 feet long. So needless to say, there's a huge size difference between the two.
Yeah.
Whereas like maybe Primeape is, I don't know the actual size, I didn't look it up, but say it's like 3 foot tall or something. And its hands have merged into boxing gloves. And that's basically the only difference. But I have to think of positioning the characters, what's going to look best, what's going to make sense, the perspective of everything, where I'm kind of assuming that you've kind of either gotten that down or your cartoonist style is.
You always have to think about that kind of thing. It just becomes easier and more natural, I guess, over time, but
that's what I'm assuming.
You still have to think about it.
But are you going to do like 10 drawer overs because you just can't get it correctly? I don't know.
It has happened, yeah. Especially that's what the drafting stage is for, at least on, when I'm drawing digitally.
And maybe that's another thing. I'm doing traditional, you're doing digital. You can erase something 1,000 times. It doesn't make a difference. I can only do that so much. Maybe the lead of the pencil is going to end up getting smushed. Or if I do it too hard, it's going to ruin the paper that it's being drawn on. So that makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like, that's why for traditional, you just have to draw a lot, and there's a lot of drawings you just throw away and move on from. But I guess that's a downside of digital too, to be honest, though, because I don't have those like records of failed drawings. They just get erased into nothing.
I mean, maybe, but you could always put like additional layers if you really wanted to have a record of it, or keep the ones that you want to.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Anyways, I'm sorry. Now it's becoming GameRomp or something.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you something about Pokemon, but maybe we should call it a day.
Yeah, I can talk about Pokemon next week. Actually, hopefully, maybe next week I'll have actually finished Leaf Green. I'll just say that much.
Really? That's surprising to hear. I would be surprised if you did, but hey, prove me wrong, I guess.
I'll try my best.
You haven't even beat Giovanni yet, right?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, you have?
We'll talk about this next week.
Okay, sure. In that case, never mind. Well, I guess we'll see. Well, that was
an interesting and another kind of tangent discussion.
Yeah, this is what our podcast is gonna be. We're just fucking talking about all sorts of dumb crap. So
I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I like it.
Not you. I meant the audience.
I know. I like talking to you, babe. So I'm always having a good time here. I love doing this every week.
And if you're still listening, please leave us comments. And if you leave it on Apple Podcasts or something, please send us an email or Discord message or something, because I won't be able to see it otherwise. Sorry. Blame Apple.
We don't have Apple devices. Anyway, we should go.
Yep. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.